She didn't listen when they told her to sit still. She didn't listen when they said she was too much. And thank heavens she didn't, because the world needed her to be exactly as loud, wild, and unrelenting as she was. They say the most dangerous thing a woman can do is not obey, but I say the most powerful thing she can do is refuse. Today I want to talk about the kind of woman we are told not to be. The one who ignores expectations, the one who questions rules, the one who says no and means it. If you've ever been told you're too loud, too ambitious, too sensitive, or simply too much, this talk is for you. Because we're going to unravel why the world fears a woman who doesn't listen, and why it's time she becomes the world's new blueprint. From the moment a girl takes her first breath, the world begins to shape her with a story she did not ask for. A story that defines what it means to be good. This narrative is subtle, yet it is everywhere. It's in the way adults praise her when she is quiet and punish her when she speaks out of turn. It's in the way girls are taught to say yes when they mean maybe and I'm sorry when they've done nothing wrong. The good girl is an image, polished, pleasing, and perpetually apologetic. She is the girl who smiles even when uncomfortable, who nods in agreement just to keep the peace, and who softens every edge of her personality so no one else feels threatened. It is a myth built on obedience, not authenticity, on approval, not agency. This myth is reinforced with every fairy tale that ends in a woman being rewarded for her silence, for her kindness in the face of cruelty, for her willingness to be saved instead of save herself. It is laced into the media we consume, where women are shown as likable only when they are agreeable. In classrooms, assertive girls are often labeled bossy, while boys showing the same traits are considered leaders. On playgrounds, girls who climb too high, run too fast, or shout too loudly are told to tone it down. The message is clear. To be loved, a girl must be less assertive, less opinionated, less visible. But what's most insidious about this myth is how it disguises itself as virtue. Being good sounds desirable, admirable even, but goodness in this context is not about ethics or empathy, it's about compliance. The good girl archetype serves a social function. It keeps girls manageable, palatable, and easily controlled. It discourages them from asking hard questions, setting boundaries, or standing alone. It teaches them to value being liked over being respected, to prioritize comfort over conviction, and eventually it convinces many women to silence themselves before anyone else has to. This conditioning doesn't disappear in adulthood, it evolves. It shows up in workplaces, where women downplay their successes to avoid seeming arrogant. It surfaces in relationships, where they shrink their needs to preserve harmony. It reappears in motherhood, where expectations multiply but support vanishes, and still the woman is expected to smile through exhaustion. The myth persists because it is profitable, predictable, and easy to uphold, and because questioning it means risking disapproval, something the good girl has been taught to fear more than anything else. We are often praised for being good listeners, as if the act of listening is inherently virtuous. But rarely do we interrogate what we are listening to, why we are listening, or what is expected to come after. For many women, listening has not been presented as an act of understanding or empathy, but as a behavioral expectation, a quiet compliance, a conditioned submission. It starts early, when girls are taught to be attentive in conversations, not so they can form ideas of their own, but so they can better mirror, affirm, and accommodate the feelings of others. The listening they're praised for is not the kind that empowers, it's the kind that erases. It's not about connection, it's about containment. This kind of listening isn't encouraged equally. In many societies, boys are taught to listen so they can lead, to take in information, analyze it, and then respond with authority. Girls, on the other hand, are encouraged to listen so they can follow, to absorb, agree, and conform. Listening, for them, becomes a form of surveillance, a way of constantly monitoring the emotional climate around them to avoid conflict, to to maintain harmony, to make others comfortable. The result is a generation of women who listen to instructions that diminish them, to criticism that gaslights them, to expectations that burden them, and to doubts that don't even belong to them, all while ignoring the quiet voice inside that urges them to do the opposite. True listening, when chosen freely, is one of the most powerful acts of humanity, but coerced listening, listening that is demanded, expected, and unreciprocated, becomes something entirely different. It becomes silence masquerading as empathy. It becomes the polite nod, the closed mouth, the internalized hesitation. Women are taught that to listen is to love, and so they listen through discomfort, through condescension, through abuse. They listen not because it helps them grow, but because not listening would mean being labeled rude, difficult, defiant, or worse, dangerous. But here's what rarely gets said. Listening is only meaningful when it is a choice, when it comes from a place of strength, not fear, when it's used not to absorb but to discern, to hear what is said and what is not said, and then decide what to carry forward and what to leave behind. Listening should be reciprocal, not performative. It should be empowering, not exhausting. It should be a dialogue, not a demand. But for that to happen, we must unlearn the way listening has been weaponized, not as an act of learning, but as a tool of compliance. There is something profoundly unsettling to society about a woman who does not follow the script, a woman whose choices cannot be forecasted, whose emotions are not tempered to accommodate others, whose identity is not shaped by public comfort. She disrupts the established order. She refuses to be predictable, and therefore she refuses to be controlled. Society clings to predictability because it provides safety, structure, and simplicity. And when a woman refuses to fit into the narrow roles pre-written for her, the obedient daughter, the selfless mother, the quiet employee, the agreeable partner, she is no longer a character in someone else's story. She begins to write her own, and that is when the discomfort begins. The unpredictable woman is not dangerous because she harms others. She is dangerous because she unsettles norms. She does not offer the certainty that she will stay silent when wronged, that she will choose sacrifice over ambition, that she will prioritize reputation over truth. She challenges institutions by existing fully within them, asking questions instead of smiling, leading instead of following, leaving instead of enduring. Her refusal to perform the expected script isn't just personal rebellion, it's a political statement. Every time she chooses to speak when silence is demanded, to walk away when endurance is praised, to grow past the boundaries set for her, she exposes the cracks in the system itself. And society is quick to respond. It labels her unstable, irrational, emotional, dramatic, not because she is any of those things, but because it needs her to be. These labels are not observations, they are containment strategies. They are designed to reduce her complexity into caricature. The unpredictable woman threatens the illusion that roles are natural, that women are happiest when they are pliant, that power must always be accompanied by aggression or masculinity. Her presence challenges the binary thinking that says women are either saints or sinners, caretakers or rebels, soft or angry. She is none and all of those things, and that contradiction makes her ungovernable. Unpredictability in men is often reframed as genius, eccentricity, innovation, even brilliance, but in women it is rarely romanticized, it is pathologized. Women who defy expectations are not seen as creative, they are seen as problematic. They are cautioned, criticized, and often punished socially and professionally. Their unpredictability is treated not as a spark of authenticity, but as a threat to the predictable, patriarchal order of things, because when a woman is unpredictable, she cannot be managed. She cannot be molded, minimized, or manipulated. She sets her own tempo. She dares to change, and change, more than anything else, terrifies the structures built to keep her in place. History has never been neutral. It has always been edited, not just by what is recorded, but by what is left out. And more often than not, what is left out are the voices of women who were ignored while they lived and only acknowledged when their absence became too loud to overlook. These women were not listened to in their time, not because they lacked brilliance or vision, but because their truths were too disruptive, too inconvenient, too ahead of what the world was willing to accept. They were dismissed as dreamers, troublemakers, radicals, but what they were, in their essence, were prophets of progress, the kind of women who refused to sit quietly at the back of the room, who kept speaking even as the doors closed in their faces. Women whose impact is felt more than their names are known. Think of the countless women who first raised their voices, not in auditoriums, but in kitchens, in fields, in classrooms, in streets. Rosa Parks was not just tired when she refused to give up her seat. She was done listening to a system that told her she was less. Malala Yousafzai did not simply write about education. She defied an entire regime that demanded her silence and paid for it with blood. And yet she spoke again. Greta Thunberg stood alone with a handmade sign, a teenager with a voice that roared across oceans because she refused to wait for permission to be taken seriously. These women were not born with megaphones in their hands. They were born into silence, and they clawed their way out of it, one sentence at a time. There are also the women history barely whispers about, the nameless ones, the garment workers who struck for fair wages, the black women who organized behind the scenes of civil rights movements without ever making headlines, the mothers who marched with signs bearing their children's names, refusing to let their stories vanish into statistics. These women were rarely invited to speak on stages or in parliaments, yet they shaped legislation, they shook governments, they made presidents pause and entire populations rethink what was tolerable, and most of them were never truly heard while they were doing it. Their victories were often claimed by others, their courage diluted into footnotes. But if you trace the arc of any significant change, you'll find their fingerprints all over it. Unheard women are not passive victims of neglect. They are often the fiercest fighters. They do not wait for applause. They build movements in whispers. Their stories teach us something essential, that being unheard does not mean being irrelevant. That power can exist in obscurity. That defiance does not need a spotlight. It only needs conviction. The world often only listens once the volume of their actions becomes undeniable, once their resilience can no longer be reshaped or romanticized. But by then, these women have already changed the landscape, not by asking to be listened to, but by acting as if they already had been. There is no greater responsibility, and no greater opportunity, than shaping the way the next generation sees themselves and the world around them. And for too long, we've mistaken obedience for virtue and conformity for success. We've praised children, especially girls, when they sit quietly, follow directions, and don't make a mess of things. We tell them they're well-behaved when they don't talk back, when they ask for permission instead of asserting needs, when they stay inside the lines. But every time we reward silence over curiosity, we are not just managing behavior, we are shaping identity. We are telling them in subtle and not so subtle ways that being accepted is more important than being authentic. That agreement is safer than inquiry. That peace at any cost is better than truth at any price. But what if we raised our children differently? What if we praised the questions instead of just the answers? What if we taught them that respect does not mean submission, and that being kind does not mean being complicit? What if we told them that the world doesn't need more people who know how to follow rules, but more people who know how, and when, to challenge them? Raising a generation that questions means equipping them with the critical tools to dissect the systems they inherit. It means encouraging them to ask, who made this rule? Who benefits from it? Who is harmed by it? And why should I obey something that doesn't serve justice or truth? This does not mean raising children who are reckless or disrespectful. It means raising children who are aware, who understand the difference between tradition and truth, who know that morality and legality are not always aligned. It means raising young people who are not afraid to challenge what they've been taught, including what we as adults have taught them. That requires humility. It requires letting go of the need to be right, the desire to be in control, and the fear of being questioned ourselves. But it also requires courage, because raising a question-asking generation means raising a generation that will eventually turn those questions on us, our choices, our values, our silences. And that is precisely what must happen if real progress is to be made, because every step forward in human history has been fueled not by quiet compliance, but by bold questions. Questions that were at first dismissed, ridiculed, punished, but eventually impossible to ignore. We do not need more daughters who whisper their dreams under their breath, or sons who believe gentleness is weakness. We need children of all genders who can think critically, speak courageously, and imagine boldly. And that only happens when we stop handing them scripts and start handing them space. Space to explore, to argue, to fail, to rise, to become more than we were allowed to be. So here's to the woman who doesn't listen. Not because she's arrogant, not because she's rude, but because she already listened for too long. She listened to doubt, to fear, to shame, and now she listens only to her own voice. And that, perhaps, is the bravest kind of listening there is,